So I'll just quickly just say again, we're going to be starting in a moment. We've got a full presentation and an opportunity for you to get involved and ask questions of two of the planning officers who are on the forum tonight. So I think if we make a start, actually. So if can I have the next slide, please, Mark? Has it switched? Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. So, right, so my name is Simon Fairs. I'm part of the citizen involvement team, and our role, so the picture you can see here is a group of citizens who are essentially involved predominantly around adult social care at the moment, but in delivering real change within the council. Our role is to empower you as the citizens of Birmingham to try and help to develop the services that you use, to get your voice to be at the centre of adult social care, of planning, of housing, things like the council tax, etc., and how we can make them work better for you. So can I have the next slide, please, Mark? So we used to meet. Why are we using a virtual forum? Unfortunately, we're living in a world of pandemic at the moment, and the last thing that we want to do is in any danger of catching COVID. We want to bring it together in a really safe environment. So this is a new format. What we do realise is that this format can be limited. It is a format where unless you're digitally included, you can't get in. So we are looking for, and it's something where if you've got other suggestions you want to make as the meeting goes on around how we can have a more inclusive approach. We do use Teams, Microsoft Teams, which you can have a up to 30 people on a call, but it can be problematic at times. So we want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that means that we can update you, so you can see what the latest news is from us, etc. So really, if what we're saying is get involved. So if you can put me the next slide there, Mark. And to do that, well, this is a screen that I created. So hopefully this is what you can see on your screen at the moment. You've got the large picture of the presentation. You've got a smaller picture of me waffling on at you. And then the most important part of tonight is inside of the red box. You will see the question and answer box. And what we'd like from you is to populate that with any questions you've got around this subject tonight. You can do that anonymously. You can do that by, first of all, typing your name in, and then we will get to know who we are. We can directly answer to you. So that's your way of getting the questions in. And what will happen is they'll come through to me, and then I'll pass them on to Mark. And then Mark will have a pause in his presentation about halfway through and take some questions then, and then he'll continue. So without further ado, that's enough from myself. So I'm going to hand over to Mark and welcome you all to tonight's forum. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks very much, Simon, and good evening, everybody. Hopefully you'll be able to follow the slides. I'm going to tell you quite a lot, and there's a lot to talk about. As Simon says, if you've got any questions that come up as I go through, you can put those to us. But I will make sure that my details are circulated after this, and if anyone wants to get in touch with me direct, I'm more than happy to discuss any of this with you and talk it through afterwards. So I'm the development manager for East Birmingham. My background's in the planning department, but what we're working on now, the inclusive growth strategy, is a little bit different from what you'll have seen before in terms of planning documents. So to explain, first of all, what we mean by East Birmingham, it's not an area that's been used for anything else. So it's not like a specific area that you will have come across before, probably. But broadly speaking, it takes in everything from the M6 corridor in the north of the area, down to the Coventry Road, A45 area in the south, and it runs from the Middle Ring Road on the edge of the city centre, all the way out to our boundary with Solihull. Now, it's a big area, and within it there's quite a diverse set of populations, of places. It's quite a complicated and interesting place. So in the document, we've broken it down into the 5 areas that you can see on the screen. So as the names suggest, the Northern Industrial Corridor and the Southern Industrial Corridor are places where there's a lot of commercial and industrial uses, whereas inner, mid and outer East Birmingham are much more residential. But there's some quite interesting differences between those areas. Certainly the age of houses tends to decrease as you move out of the city, because the parts on the, closer to the city centre were built first. The age of the population tends to increase as you move out. So inner East Birmingham has one of the youngest populations in the country, a higher proportion of children than almost anywhere else. Whereas outer East Birmingham, more in line with the rest of the country, there's a lot of older people. And then there's ethnic differences in the population as well. So inner East Birmingham is very diverse. There's people from lots and lots of different backgrounds. There's a transient population and people who may not be in Birmingham for very long. They're just on their passing through in some ways. The proportion of black and minority ethnic people is quite high, but it's diverse in the truest sense. People from all kinds of different backgrounds. Mid-East Birmingham is predominantly British Asian, and then as you move out into outer East Birmingham, then it's more white British people. So it's quite an interesting different set of areas there, and they each have their, well, in much smaller areas than these 5, there's lots of different areas of character and history within East Birmingham. So moving on to why we're talking about East Birmingham. So for many years, it's been recognised that East Birmingham and neighbouring North Solihull has some significant challenges. And we talk about deprivation, and what we mean is issues of poverty, educational performance, how difficult it can be for people to find work, the quality of people's health care, and the impact that has on quality of life. What we've got going for us at the moment, which is really positive, is that there is a once in a lifetime opportunity for East Birmingham. So people have different views about the High Speed 2 project, but what isn't in any doubt is the positive impact it will have on Birmingham in terms of the number of jobs and the vast amount of development that is going to happen in Birmingham Curzon in the city centre and around the airport in Solihull. So those 2 major zones of development are either side of East Birmingham. You've then got the railway running through and all of the activity around the construction of it, and then the proposed East Birmingham to Solihull Midland Metro line, which will run from the city centre, from Digbeth, through the centre of East Birmingham, through Bawdsley Green, along the Meadway, and out to the other High Speed 2 station in Solihull. So that will make a dramatic difference to the way people can move around. And in a similar way to High Speed 2, it represents a huge amount of money coming into the area. So we've got an opportunity to capture as much of that money as possible and make sure it benefits local people, and it doesn't just flow through the area, but that investment's coming to East Birmingham, and the benefits are being felt by people who live in East Birmingham. So the plan shows you what East Birmingham looks like in terms of its relationship with the rest of the city and the airport, etc. As the bullet points say, I think at the last census, it was actually 239,000 people in East Birmingham, putting it just a little bit smaller than Derby and larger than most UK cities in its own right. So it's a massive area. It's got 20 council wards within it and parts of 4 constituencies. So most of it's Hodge Hill, but there's bits of others as well. And as the slide starts to set out, there's a lot of different things that we can be doing in order to move the area forward and start delivering improvements. I think it's worth recognising as well that although part of the reason we're doing this is that there are significant challenges in the area, there's also a lot of really great stuff going on. There's, I've mentioned the young population, there's all the vast potential of all those young people, but there's lots of different groups and organisations and collections of people doing really good, really worthwhile stuff in East Birmingham. There's some great local centres, there's some fantastic green spaces. So it's about building on those strengths as much as it is about tackling the challenges. So in terms of what we're going to do, the strategy is it's a high level document because it deals with a really big area, and it was intended as the start of a conversation. So because the area is so big, there's so many different people, and there's a challenge there in terms of how we can engage with all those different people. So you represent part of the population of the city, and some of you East Birmingham, but it's a massive challenge getting through to all those people. So the idea of the strategy, it's not a document saying this is what we're going to do. It's something saying this is what we think the strengths and weaknesses are, and then these are our ideas about how we should move forward. And the consultation that we spent many months doing this year, and that we had to do a lot of like this actually, was intended to test some of those ideas with the community and give us some feedback on it so that we can continue moving in the right direction. But the idea is that as we get into the next phase, which will be doing things, bringing forward projects, that we will keep all these conversations going, and there will be a continual engagement. And for each of the projects and areas of work, it will have its own engagement approach, and wherever possible, we will be looking at co-design and collaboration with the community. So with that said, the slide has some of the ideas about the kind of thing we might do. So it's partly about prioritising East Birmingham. I think some people feel like the area's been a bit left behind. It's not had the attention it deserves, and that it needs to be front of the queue when we're looking at our priorities. So one of the things the strategy says that it will be, and that the council and our partners who have helped to develop the strategy will be looking to do things in East Birmingham first and fastest. We want to work with the local community to ensure that we're doing the right thing when it's us doing it, that we're helping the community to do more, and that through that we can help local people to feel like that they and you are in control, that you've got more influence and power, and that you're able to shape the way that the city is developing. We want to be building and maintaining good links between the City Council and, it says the community. I think, as I've said, it's lots and lots of different communities. I think as well as that, we want to be building strong relations between the communities. There's a lot of different people in East Birmingham, and it would be brilliant to get larger groups of people working together and spending time together. We want to improve the way that the council services are delivered, but not just the council, our partners in the NHS and the Combined Authority and the police and other agencies as well. And we want to make it easier for people to move around the area, because if you can travel easily and you can travel in a way that's clean, environmentally friendly and safe, then you've got much better opportunities and prospects. So I think that brings me to my first pause. I'm hoping Simon can help me establish whether there are any questions to answer.
Hi Mark, hopefully you can hear me, everybody. So we've got one from Sadiq at the moment. He's just asking, is Ward End in this area?
Yeah, so Ward End is definitely in the area. It's I can probably share a map with the different wards on at the end if you like, although once again I'll have to ask Simon to set that up. But yeah, Ward End is very much within East Birmingham.
Fantastic. So obviously there's an opportunity. If anyone's got any questions around the kind of geographical side of East Birmingham, feel free to pop in. Mark isn't finished at this point. He has more to go on. So hopefully what I might do is, if you think of anything while Mark is talking, do what Sadiq's done, pop it into the side there, pop it into the Q&A. And like I say, there's no wrong question. This is what Mark and James is here to discuss. So I'll hand back to Mark, and I'll pick up any questions as we go along for you, Mark, and then I'll bring you back in. All right.
For what it's worth, I can see the Q&A box now, so if anything pops up, then I might pick up on it straight away.
Okay. Yeah. So
to carry on, what the strategy talks about is largely the principles of how we should work. So it has big moves in it, which are the key things that we think we need to do, and these are the kind of headlines there. But it also has principles about how we want to work. So power, influence and participation will be one of those, about how we can, it's what I was saying a minute ago, about empowering the community to do more and feel like you've got a stronger voice. The environment cuts across everything, and you're aware of the City Council's declaration of a climate emergency and our route to zero work to get the city to a point where we're zero carbon. We are looking at the early intervention and prevention approach. So for anyone who's not aware, what that means is if you can intervene, particularly with younger people, to set them up in a way that means they've got better prospects or lower risks of something going wrong, then they're likely to have better outcomes throughout their life. So it's the stitch in time idea that if we can intervene now and do the right thing, then we can prevent a much bigger problem occurring in the future. And then the crucial one that I think is really important is about joined up working. So I've talked about the council's partners. This document isn't just a Birmingham City Council thing. It's been developed working closely with the NHS, the Combined Authority, Children's Trust, and various other partners who have a big influence on East Birmingham. And what we're going to do is to work together across all of these things, so that we're not doing a housing project or a skills project or whatever it is. We're always thinking about all of those principles and how we can be getting the maximum value out of all the money that's spent. I can see there's questions popping up. I will save them till the end if that's okay. But just to get into the detail a little bit anyway of what some of this might look like. In terms of education, skills and employment, worklessness when we wrote the strategy a year ago was very high in East Birmingham. And now, of course, in the wake of the pandemic, it's going to be dramatically higher than it ever was before. So we've got a real priority that we must address in terms of helping people to get good quality jobs, helping people to have the qualifications they'll need to access them, supporting businesses. We're looking at our grant funding programs and that kind of thing, so that as quickly as we possibly can, we can start to make life much easier for people in East Birmingham in terms of getting into good work that will pay the bills, and in many cases also that to help people have a way forward if they want to gain new skills and open up new opportunities. And for young people, of course, their progress at school and what happens to them after school is absolutely crucial in terms of the course their life is going to take. I think I've covered most of what's on the slide, so I'll carry on. Transport and infrastructure, I've talked about high speed 2 and I've talked about the metro. Those things are a little way off. They'll take some years to deliver, and obviously they cost a lot of money. And in the case of the metro, that's one of the key things, is making sure that we secure that money for East Birmingham and that the metro gets built. But there's a lot of other things as well that go into making up the transport picture. There's walking and cycling. There's public transport in terms of the buses and also the sprint routes, which are in the process. of being delivered over the next couple of years. And then there's the rail network as well. So what we want to do is to try and deliver improvements more quickly. So some of you may have seen the Birmingham Transport Plan, which was recently published. What that says is we've got to redesign the way Birmingham's transport system works. The city was designed, or certainly the middle of the city was designed around the car, and that's got to the point now where it can't continue because traffic and congestion will only get worse. We've been put in a situation where we've got to have the clean air zone in the centre, obviously very divisive issue, but it's because the impact of all that congestion and all those cars is that it's poisoning the air. It also means that local centres are clogged up with parking, they're difficult for pedestrians. A lot of people are put off cycling on the road because of congestion. So something's got to be done. And what we're working towards is a combination of all these things, so that although some people will still have to drive, for everybody else there'll be a much better range of options for how you can get around, and often how you can get around in a way that's healthy as well as being fast and everything else. Speaking of health, the life expectancy for someone in Heartland's ward is around 10 years less than somebody who lives in Sutton Four Oaks. So when we talk about health and well-being, and particularly when we talk about health inequality, that's what we mean. So clearly it's not right that somebody's life expectancy should be that badly affected by where they live or where they happen to be born. So to do something about that, there are things we can do in terms of encouraging people to have more active lifestyles, and some of that falls under transport and green space. But there's also a lot of work to be done between the council and our social care services and the NHS, which is actually several different organisations. So you have the NHS Trust that runs Heartland Hospital, for example, but you've also got the Birmingham Solihull Clinical Commissioning Group. So getting those partners working together to achieve some of the things that are on the slide is a real priority. If you're wondering what a healthy food economy is, that idea is about making healthy food available and affordable, and also the opportunities that surround that. So there are ideas like urban farming, where you can grow salad in buildings. There's training people in catering and the food-related industries. And there's finding ways of improving the way that healthy food is accessed. I've not explained that very well, but what I'm saying is that you'll all know local centres that have got lots of different kind of fried chicken takeaways. If you wanted to get a healthy takeaway, you might find it quite difficult. So that kind of issue is on our radar as something that we'd like to try and do something about. And then local centres and green spaces. So the white dots on the plan are some of the local centres in the area. There's quite a lot of shops and things here and there that won't show up on there, but that's certainly the larger ones, and I'm sure most of you will have heard of most of these places. Local centres are really important to people's day-to-day lives, and I think particularly now the economy's changed a bit, there's lots more people working from home, and the chances are that even in a couple of years' time, there will be more people working from home then than there were a year ago. Now that's an opportunity for local centres. There's also a question about what's going to happen to support that. So if people are working from home, but they need somewhere to meet, to have a business meeting, then where do they do that? Could that happen at local centres as well? There are opportunities to improve these places, and we have an urban centres framework document that was published, that was adopted earlier this year, that has plans for several of the bigger local centres. But what we'd like to do is not just look at transport and the buildings, but also be looking at the quality of the environment, thinking about how we combine the different council services, like, you know, we have things we can do about litter and fly tipping and people parking in ways they shouldn't do, and derelict buildings and various other things like that. What we want to do is to bring all those things together so that we can improve local centres and make them a nicer place to be. Work with local communities to identify what their priorities are for these places, and it may be that there's opportunities to create community assets where people can come together and do activities, and you know, run social clubs, and charities can do their thing. And then we can be working towards the development and renewal of these places over a slightly longer term, and that can be tied in with the transport changes. Green spaces are really, really important as well. So many people have said to us during the consultation that you know, we've got green spaces, but they don't really, you know, they're not really pulling their weight. There's not enough going on. There's not enough for young people to do, and we understand that. And I think there's a big opportunity to get all of these many green spaces providing a lot more value to local people. And you can see from the plan, there's a lot of green space, particularly as you move a little further out of the city centre and a bit further away from the M6. The Coal Valley's enormous, that green spine through the area. So once again, what we want to do is be thinking about local centres, green spaces, how people move between them, and how we can work with the community to make them better places that work harder for everybody. So in terms of where we go next, we've spent most of the year since February consulting, and my colleague James Carless and I have had well over 100 meetings with different organisations and stakeholders. I think a couple of people perhaps on the call, I don't know, to try and understand as many different perspectives as possible. In many cases, the groups we've spoken to are in touch with a large group of people. So we've asked organisations and stakeholders in the community to help us get our message out and to invite people to come and talk to us. Now, realistically, the nature of the strategy is that I think for a lot of people, it doesn't necessarily immediately grab them, because it's a big thing, it's long term, and it's full of ideas. What it's not saying is we're going to come and do this project in your local area and it's going to happen then. And the reason for that is that we haven't got there yet quite. And also, as I said, the point of the strategy was to get a conversation going. What we're going to do now quite quickly though, based on all the comments, representations and conversations we've had, is we're going to revise the strategy, and we're going to move into the implementation phase. And what that means is that there'll be an East Birmingham programme, which will be a collection of projects, and it's a 20-year programme, so we won't be able to do everything at once. But what we want to do within the first 2 years or so is to be doing at least something that moves us in the right direction across all of those different areas of priority. And we will be looking at local centres, we'll be looking at parks, we'll be looking at skills and health and business grants and all of those things. And what we're doing at the moment is the kind of behind the scenes work that's necessary to get all of that moving. So your input will be welcomed. I'll come back to the questions in just a second. I'd just like to reiterate though that this isn't a one-off. We want to keep the conversation going. I'd quite like to come back and speak to some of you again. But as we get into the projects, at that point, if for example we're doing something focusing on Ward End Park, we will come and speak to all the people we know have an interest in Ward End Park, and we'll be setting up a framework for co-design and collaboration and conversation about each project as we go. So I should probably stop at this point. So just looking in the questions, there's a question about North Solihull. So if I could put my map up, I would show you. But essentially, if you carry on past Shard End, then all of the stuff inside the M6. So it's Castle Bromwich, it's Ford Bridge, it's Chelmsley Wood, and it's Kingshurst. Now there's a North Solihull regeneration area that Solihull Council have been working on for some years. The idea is that although that's Solihull and we're Birmingham, we'll have Solihull Council involved in the work that we're doing. Wherever we can, we'll work together, and it might be that some of our projects cross the boundary. So we want to be joined up with Solihull, and that's what that's all about. Sadiq, you're asking what we're expecting from you. I think in the first instance, all I'm expecting or hoping for is just for your time and attention. And if you found what I've talked about interesting, then that's brilliant. In the longer term, if you've got the time to give us some feedback, even if it's to say, I think this is a terrible idea, then fine, tell us what you think. And the option is there that as we move forward and we're getting into the detail of saying, okay, now we want to come and look at Small Heath Local Centre, or now we want to come and offer this new, training package, that if it's something that affects you, then you've got the option to get involved and potentially to help us to make the links with local people, local organisations. So that's what it's all about, really.
Are you seeing them? You've got Megan McCann next. Do you want me to read it out for you, or can you see?
Okay, yeah. It's all right. I haven't seen any of those, which is great. I thought I'd run out of things to talk about.
No, they're coming in thick and fast now.
Yeah. So Megan, I've been involved with the Stechford group. It's the Baptist Church, isn't it? And the Stechford Glebe Farm residents. I've had a number of meetings with them. The process there is that the site was declared surplus. It was agreed that it was going to be sold, and but the community group have expressed an interest in the land. And what we've done is we've worked with them to help provide them some advice and assistance so that they're in a position to put forward their proposal. So the process we've got at the moment and the way it works is that we can't choose to just hand the land over, or even to say we're going to do a specific deal with you. We're quite heavily constrained in the way that we can sell land, but what we can do is make sure that they've been given plenty of opportunity to come up with a proposal, and they've been given the time and advice that they need in order to be able to have a fair opportunity to acquire the land. I think what they're proposing is really good, and I think if it doesn't come through for them at the Stechford site, then we will continue to work with them and try and help them to come up with an alternative.
You've got David next, David Treadwell's a couple of comments there.
Okay, yeah, I think it's really interesting, David. I think I've heard it referred to as the loss of the commons, that some of the kind of community fabric has perhaps been weakened. I know that certainly from the point of view of the council, as you will all know, over the last, it's more than a decade now, we've had our funding very significantly reduced. And there's a lot that the council used to do that we can't with the funding that we've got at the moment. I think we've got less than half the number of staff that we had when I joined in 2004, believe it or not. So I think part of what you're talking about, David, in terms of some of the things outside the council are perhaps in some cases victims of the same kind of trend, some to do with the economy and some to do with funding. I think where we are now, though, there's an opportunity to rethink the way that some of these things work. So we're talking to the police, we're looking at the provision of youth clubs and libraries and all sorts of different things. And the world has changed, and in some ways it's changed in negative ways, but there are opportunities out there. So in terms of, for example, what does a 21st century library do? So yes, it should be somewhere you can go and borrow books still, but can it be a centre for for training, can it be a place where if people struggle to get on the internet, that we can have our services, you know, we have a digital inclusion strategy just coming out. Should that be part of what we do through libraries? Is it about learning and people's access to information? And I think the same's true of lots of different services. We've got an opportunity to kind of take stock and decide, if we want these things to work better, what should they look like, and what do we need to do to change things? And in the document, we've tried to avoid jargon, but I think we talk about public service reform, and really that's what we're talking about in there, is how we can make all these things work better, even if we don't have, in some cases, the budgets we used to have. So the census, I'd agree with you. It's a bit awkward that it only happens every 10 years, and it's always, you know, really fascinating to see. One of the things we're looking at through the programme, though, is how we can monitor some of the key things we need to be keeping an eye on in a way that doesn't happen at the moment. So we've got some kinds of information for the whole of Birmingham, for example, but not for Alum Rock or not for Garrett's Green. So we're thinking about what we can do about that. And it may be that there's some of the key things in the census that we can find a way of keeping an eye on, even in between these major cycles. David, your point about hubs, I think that's absolutely true. I think one of the things we're thinking about, and I don't know if any of you have come across this idea, there's something called the 15-minute neighbourhood, which was an idea I think they pioneered in Paris. And the idea goes that you should be able to access all the things you need on a daily basis within 15 minutes or 20 minutes, some people would say, of where you live. And ideally, you should be able to access them using clean, safe, active forms of transport. So what that means is that we'd want to be looking, if we put those ideas into action, which I think we should, we'd be looking at, if you live in a given spot in East Birmingham, how long does it take you to get to a GP? How long does it take you to get to a pharmacist, a community centre, a park, a playground, all of those things? And then try and set things up in a way that helps people to make all of those links. I think local centres, as I was saying earlier, have a massive role to play in that. So as well as shops, what you'd want is local centres to have a really good range of amenities and facilities so that people can get to their local centre, and when they're there, there's more than just a supermarket. You know, they've got some of these key things that everybody needs. And I think an important part of that is the community infrastructure, where people can get together to do social activities, to do voluntary activities, where social enterprises can do their thing, because that's how we get back a little bit of that kind of community fabric, and that's how people can be empowered to do more for themselves. And I think if you're talking about local citizens, I think that's a really good point. I think that's part of what citizenship's all about, is being able to get involved and do things. And we definitely want to be making that easier and supporting that however we can. And the last one's, it's you, Simon, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just letting everybody know that we will send out the presentation and contact details after the meeting. But at the moment, we have no further questions. So I don't know if anyone has any further questions for Mark, if he's not answered your question that you put. So I'll just pause for a moment. Let you have a think. I mean, what we will do is, obviously, everyone who's on the call tonight and everyone who's registered will receive an email from us with an invite to get further involved in what's happening with the projects. So as Mark says, this is the beginning, not the end. And it's really a new phase that we're moving with the council, in the way that we engage you as citizens, to get you centrally involved in the work that we're actually doing, because you are the people that will live what we are doing. So if there's anything that you want to ask now, if not, then what we can do is obviously once you've got those contact details, you can send it in privately. I know that both Mark and James and myself are more than happy to organise smaller meetings where it can be more face-to-face virtually at the moment. So that's something we can do. But at the moment, no one's taken the opportunity to quiz you anymore at the moment, Mark. So I think, oh no, we've got one. Thank you.
Oh,
Here we go.
Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water.
Publish. There we go.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So in terms of, I think we need to get down to a local level, and we need to make sure that we're working with people who really understand their area. So obviously, you know, if people have got views about an area where they don't live, then they might well be valid, but we need to make sure that we're working with a representative group of people for any given area. And I think that's key, because you'll know that sometimes the people who are keen to talk on behalf of their area don't represent everybody within it. So we want to work hard to make sure we really are getting through to a good range of people. But I think it's really important just to reiterate though. So we're not claiming at this point to have all the answers. The strategy's got some principles in it and some ideas that I think are really strong. And generally, the feedback we've had in the consultation has been people saying, yeah, these are the right things to be doing. But generally in the nicest possible way, please get on with it. So that's what we're trying to do at the moment. And what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is perhaps come back in a few months when we're getting into the specifics and we can talk about what we're doing in particular areas, to get your views on some of that once it's started to kind of crystallize into more specific areas of activity.
Brilliant. Okay, so I think that was the last question. So unless anyone's got any dying questions, I'll just put myself back on. Mark, I'd like to say thank you very much, Mark. At the moment, if somebody does pop something up, Mark, I can bring you back. So I'll just make myself live. Yeah, and so I think at the moment we are, like we say, we're at the beginning of a process here. We're at the beginning of getting your feedback, your involvement, your it is a bit of jargon. It is something that's become a very important part of how the council works, and it is called co-production. But it really is about having you as the citizens, as the people who live in those areas, people who have an interest in those areas, people who receive services in those areas, shaping the service and the area. So so it's not just somebody who lives outside of, etc., coming in. So I think we are at the beginning. So what I will do is you'll get an email from me tomorrow. So unless anyone's really urgent and wants it tonight, please put in there now that you want it tonight. But it'll be tomorrow morning, first thing. I'll email you the presentation. We'll email you a link, because Mark and James also have, or the planning also have, a survey that's running live at the moment. Did you want to say anything about the survey, Mark? Just come back in.
Yeah, I can do. And I realised, by the way, I missed the last slide, Simon, so apologies for that. I think you've just explained it anyway.
Yeah.
In terms of the survey, so while the formal consultation was live, we had a page on Be Heard and we had a survey on there. We've also set up, though, a slightly quicker survey, just to ask people what your priorities are, what you think are some of the key challenges, and also to give you the opportunity just to make any comment you want that you want us to take into account. So the idea is we'll probably keep that going indefinitely, because we always want to be listening to people. And I think sometimes having the opportunity just to put a quick couple of sentences in a web survey is a really good way of doing that. So if any of you got the time, you want to fill that out, that would be brilliant. And although formally the consultation's ended, certainly at the moment, we'll still make sure that anything you say goes into the consultation report. And if you're keen to be involved or you're particularly interested in anything in particular, then it's an opportunity as well for you to get in touch with us and flag that up. I should say, for data protection reasons though, if you want us to contact you, then it's best to email me direct, because yeah, for legal reasons. If you send me an email, then we can be in touch. If you fill in the survey, strictly speaking, we don't have any way of following that up other than to listen to what you've said.
Thanks, Mark. So yeah, so I mean, what we'll do is we'll begin to wrap up now. You will get an email from the same as what you got today from the Get Involved inbox, and that's from our team. Our team, as I say, is dedicated just to get you involved in adult social care, in lots of different things that are going in within the council, so housing, with planning, etc. So as Mark has said, we'll give you their emails, but also you could go directly through that, and once you've contacted us, then actually we can share that data under GDPR, so we're okay, but not through SurveyMonkey, unfortunately. So yeah, so please feel free to post any comments you've got, anything you want to give feedback wise about tonight's meeting. If you think if there's better ways that we could have done this, if there was not enough information given or too much, etc., please feel free to feed that back into us. I'd like to thank the people who have attended tonight. Hopefully we'll get to meet you properly over the next coming months. This pandemic is not going to last forever, but at the moment, we are in the virtual world at the moment to keep you safe, and to hopefully lessen the spread. So I'll end by just saying stay safe, keep well, and hopefully we'll see you very shortly. Thank you again. Thank you very much. Bye bye.